Jack Ebling here with Dan Kilbridge in front of the Sparty statue. No one guarding it. I guess that's up to us tonight.
That's us,
Dan.
yep. We'll be the muscle.
We're here for press coverage, our Michigan football preview. Saturday afternoon at Michigan Stadium, the expanded Michigan Stadium. We call it the Stadium on Extends. And we'll see what happens with 114,000 people.
Right, it's now the really big house, and two 5-0 teams, both ranked in the top 25, and on top of that, one of the best rivalries in the game. You really can't get any better than that as far as the pregame hype goes.
I've talked to an awful lot of people who think Michigan State can win this game, should win this game. Apparently none of them are in Las Vegas because the Wolverines are still a 4.5-point favorite.
And that's where, Michigan always has people betting on them, much like the Dallas Cowboys, where they're going to get a few extra points in order to sort of balance that line. Now, whether or not that's going to work in their favor or not, we'll see. But I've certainly talked to a few Michigan graduates who think they're the favorites in their mind.
Well, we haven't had two 5-0 teams in this series since 1999, the 34-31 Michigan State win when Bill Burke threw for 400 yards and outplayed Tom Brady and Drew Henson. But a different quarterback this time, and as Bill Burke said, a different number 16 than what he wore.
He's a good one. I mean, you watch him, and it looks like he's returning a punt sometimes, the way he runs, and he just disappears in a hurry. So what that does is it makes Michigan State much more detail-oriented on containing him, keeping him in the pocket, and not allowing him to bounce outside and have these huge gains like he's been getting on defensive breakdowns through the first 5 games here this season.
And Michigan State had a couple defensive breakdowns with James White bouncing out for big gains with Wisconsin. But if Michigan State can hold Denard Robinson to 350 yards of total offense, maybe Tony Lippett gets the game ball.
And you know what? I talked to offensive coordinator Don Treadwell and the defensive coordinator Pat Narduzzi tonight. They said Lippett did a great job in practice all week. Said the first practice on Tuesday, defense did not look good against him. Wednesday looked a little better. Then Thursday, they said they started to really look good and kind of figure out how to contain that spread quarterback. So definitely Tony Lippett, it sounds like, did a very fine job emulating Denard Robinson on the scout team this week.
You think about Pat White, you think about Antoine Randall L. How do you stop a quarterback like Denard Robinson? If you were Pat Narduzzi, what would you do?
Well, I think you have to keep contained on both defensive ends. That's the most important thing. And luckily for the Spartans, Narduzzi said defensive end Colin Neely, who was out last week, is going to play Saturday. And he's a great run stopper, very experienced guy, being a fifth-year senior. So he really knows how to keep contained, and that's what you have to do. Contain on the edge, and then once he starts to get bunched up in the middle there, then you go after him, and you have to wrap up and tackle him.
Yeah, very important to be disciplined, to play your assignment. You can't try to do too much against a guy like this because he can make you look silly. And I wouldn't be surprised if Michigan has a couple of huge plays. I would expect him to have a couple plays over 50 yards, maybe one on the ground, one through the air.
You just can't give up too many of those plays. And I think, it's okay, like you mentioned, to have one or two. This is a very talented offense, and they might do that as long as that doesn't get you down. And you can say, hey, we had their one, now let's get them stopped here and really refocus. That's what I think they're going to have to do.
Denard Robinson has really learned how to play this game. When he was in Spartan Stadium last year, he looked like a deer in the headlights. By the time he was in spring ball, at the end of the spring practice, he was a totally different quarterback. He has a couple moves where he looks to the sideline and draws everyone in, and he's got a wide open receiver over the middle. And he's got the play now where he starts to run toward the line of scrimmage after he's had a couple big games, pulls up, he's got another wide open receiver.
Right, and I think that's just another year in the program and really grasping Coach Rich Rodriguez's read zone offense. I think that's something that he really understands better now than he did a year ago.
What about the Michigan running game? If Vince Smith has the ball or Michael Shaw, do you feel pretty good about that from a Spartan perspective?
I think Michigan State can stop those two. I mean, they've done it against Wisconsin. As you mentioned, White got free ones, but they've really done a great job against the rush, really the past 2 seasons, I think. And that's something where you really have to focus on Denard Robinson first, and then kind of those guys still have to keep them in the back of your mind, but I don't think they should be too much of a problem for Michigan State.
People talk about Denard Robinson not being injured and having more durability than they thought. He hasn't been hit by Greg Jones yet, but he has had a lot of opportunities to handle the ball, and the thing that's amazing to me is how few big mistakes he's made. He had the fumble at the 1-yard line against Indiana. Should have been a touchdown. But other than that, he has been pretty much interception-free, and he hasn't done the kind of things that you'd expect of a guy who's really starting his first season.
Right, just one interception on the year, and he's thrown for over 1,000 yards, rushed for over 900. Really starting to look like a complete quarterback. We'll see if Michigan State can get him out of his comfort zone, as no one's really seemed to have been able to do so far.
I don't know if Michigan State can stop him. I doubt that they can. Ideally, from a Spartan perspective, they'd be able to slow him down a little bit. I do think Michigan State's offense is going to have a big day against Michigan's defense, and I think the Spartan special teams are as good as any in the country.
Well, Michigan's secondary might be the worst of any in the country, so obviously Kirk Cousins has got to be looking at that, and you figure with the way they've been able to run the ball this season, time of possession is going to be big. You want to keep Michigan's defense on the field for as long as possible, get them tired, and then you don't want to get into a shootout with this Michigan team.
All right, it's predictions time. I want your score, and give me a star of the game, too.
Okay, I'm going to go, I don't think the kickers are going to be involved much in this one. I'm going to say Michigan State 42, Michigan 35. I think Michigan State does win in somewhat of a shootout, and I think the star of the game is going to be Kirk Cousins. I think he's going to have his best game maybe as a Spartan and really take advantage of that secondary.
When the Spartans have won in this series, the quarterbacks have played great. Going back to Ed Smith, Dave Urema, Dan Enos, Jim Miller, Tony Banks, Jeff Smoker, you name it. The quarterbacks have done a great job. Nobody better than Bill Burke. I agree with you. I think it's going to be Michigan State's game. I like the Spartans to win 37-31, and we'll be talking about this as a game where Kirk Cousins arrives on the national stage. Jack Ebling and Dan Kilbridge here for press coverage before the Michigan game on SpartanTailgate.com.